You are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 109.
Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where I show you how life with less alcohol is more fun than you think. I work with high achievers who struggle to drink a glass of wine without it turning into 2 bottles. I'm the one they call when they want to take it or leave it. So if you want to change your relationship with alcohol that doesn't involve counting days sober, you're in the right place.
Hi all, and welcome back to the podcast. In fact, Happy New Year. I hope you all had a wonderful festive celebration. All right, so here we are. It's the 2nd of January. Most of the parties are over. We have the whole of January facing us. There is no end in sight. Winter, at least on my side of the world, stretches out before us. Now, whether you achieved your drinking goals over Christmas, New Year, or if you didn't, this episode has something for you. In fact, even if you're doing dry January, what I have to say today will still help you as you move through the next month. My first point that I want you to remember, I want you to write this down, is we are not aiming for perfection. Now, we tend to do this at this time of year. Maybe you were doing this already yesterday. It was 1st of January. In fact, it was a Monday. So we have the Monday, which feels clean because it's the beginning of the week, and we have the 1st of January, which feels clean because we have the beginning of the year. Right, it's the end of the holiday, clean sheet, blank. It just all feels nice and new. I remember, in fact, that feeling, right? It's a bit like going back to school in September. I didn't really like the going back to school bit, but I loved the new uniform and especially the new stationery. I have a bit of a thing for stationery, pens, pencils, paper, notebooks, that sort of thing. But really the thing that got me going was the newness of it all. It felt clean and neat and unsullied and well, perfect. Which is why it can feel really good, right? When you're thinking about your goal and your goal that you're going to change your drinking, right? That can really just feel very good. You're likely going to get a dopamine boost just from that. Thinking of the goal and from deciding, yay, look at me. Look, I'm doing this. I'm really going to be doing this. And that's how it feels before it gets difficult. And before you slip up, before other things muscle in, right? All the old stresses and strains and anxiety and the need to feel good as you go through the year. So what happens is you have just one. I'll just have one drink. It wasn't planned. But, it's my first day back at work. Maybe it's the 5th of January by then. It's too much. Then a couple of days later, you have another one. And then it all starts to fall apart because you think, well, I've had one, I've ruined it now, right? That clean sheet, all ruined. I will start tomorrow, or maybe I will start on Monday or next week, or maybe even I'm just going to give up on dry January entirely and I'll do my own thing. I'm going to do a dry February instead, right? And when we say this to ourselves, when we do this, right, when perhaps we have a drink on the Thursday, and we weren't planning to, and then we have one on Friday, so, well, I'll start again next week. It kind of makes sense to us. We rationalize this. But I want you to take this concept and explore it in another area of your life. So let's think about when you're at work. Let's say you make a mistake at work. We all make mistakes now and then. Maybe you're making a mistake on a file. You're counting, you've got an Excel spreadsheet error, anything like that. Or you make a mistake on a delivery. Doesn't really matter what it is. Do you then say, that's it, I've made that mistake and I might as well just give up on the day? Right? I'm obviously not in the zone today. Things are not going well for whatever reason. So I'm just going to go home and I'm going to come back tomorrow. Right? If you turn up late for work on the Tuesday, you don't then say, well, that's it, I've screwed the week. I'm just going to, start again on Monday. No. You just pick up and carry on. So I want you to think about that when it comes to your drinking. You do this anyway. This is not some brand new concept of just carrying on when things don't go to plan. And the more we make this a thing with drinking, the more we make this a story, the harder we make it for ourselves. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. Don't aim for perfection. The second concept here is one actually that took me the longest time to really fully embody, but now I do. It's like, oh wow, there's no going back. And it's a concept I see so much value in, and I share it with my children all the time. But I was never really aware of it before I discovered coaching. And this is it simply. How you get there is how you stay there. The way I describe this most often, you may have heard me talk about this before, is it's like if you are going on a food diet. People seem to understand food diets, so I'll use that as a good example. And let's say you manage to achieve your goal weight, but you do it by eating 1 carrot and an apple every day. Fine, you get to your goal weight, but then what happens then, right? You're at your goal weight. Are you going to be then faced with eating a carrot and an apple for the rest of your life? That seems pretty miserable. So this is why often if we kind of bully and restrict ourselves to get to our goal, we then give up, because then we want to be eating all the things. We want to be eating normally. But the way we've got there, i.e. eating a carrot and an apple, is the only way we know how to stay there. It is exactly the same with drinking. If the only way you know how to get to your goal of drinking less is to go on some kind of diet, right, and be mean to yourself and to struggle and to force yourself to resist temptation, you're going to royally freak out at the idea of being able to maintain what you have accomplished without all the negative self-talk, right? Now this is open to you, that we can achieve our goals without all this nasty self-talk. You can, of course, willpower your way there, and you can use that as motivation. Many people do. You can talk about putting on your big girl pants, about giving yourself a strict talking to, staying on the straight and narrow, staying on the wagon, not risking temptation, right? All those things. You can do that. It's totally up to you. But here's what I realized. That's the approach that was at the heart of all my previous attempts to change my drinking. And it felt awful. I see now what was happening, right? I was telling myself I wanted to not have so much wine, but I was actually equating that with, and you need to be really, really good and vigilant all the time. And that was no fun at all. I wanted to enjoy myself. I wanted to have a nice life. It also had the associated impact that if I did slip up, I would talk like some really mean girl to myself, and it was just utterly unsustainable. So this is why compassion is important while you're changing your relationship with alcohol. In fact, any kind of relationship. Not because it's soppy, but because it's going to make you not reject what you're doing. You're just going to feel all around better. And when you feel better, you're willing to back yourself and you're willing to do the work. Because the number one reason we drink is to feel better. I have a whole episode on why we drink. I think it's episode 2. If you haven't listened to it yet, go back, or maybe if you have, go back and have another listen. Give some good fundamentals in it. The next thing I want to talk about here when it comes to turning over a new leaf is the whole topic of deprivation. I have done whole episodes on this, but the way I want to talk about it today is I want you to ask, what is the ticket price you're willing to pay for the life you want, right? I talk all day long about focusing on where you're going, on aiming to be there. A friend of mine who plays tennis was telling me that, right? They were saying that if you look at the net when you serve the ball, you're going to hit the net. And why you might look at the net, right? If you're not a knowledgeable player, I mean, like me, I would find myself looking at the net because you're worried about hitting it, right? So we're worried about these things. We want to keep an eye on this thing that we're worried about. But actually, by being worried and putting our focus on the thing we're worried about, you're actually not only not doing the thing you want to do, which is to get the ball over the net, but you're going to make it more likely that you're going to do the thing you don't want to do, which is hit the net. So instead, look towards what you want. Remember that analogy. Look towards, I'm looking at the area in the court where I want to hit the ball, not at the net, which is the thing I'm worried about. So how this translates to drinking is see yourself at the party or see yourself out and about, having a grand time without drinking or without drinking much. Now, this doesn't mean we aren't going to feel in that moment a bit deprived or miserable, or maybe a lot deprived or miserable. But that doesn't have to be a problem. Now, I don't really drink very much anymore. I did have a couple of sips of supposedly a special champagne on Christmas Day. Wasn't all that. I didn't have more than a couple of sips. But there are times when I still feel deprived in life. So for instance, I might leave an event early if I have a long drive ahead of me, or maybe if I have to get up early in the morning. So there I am, I'm sacrificing. So this is when my brain goes, I'm sacrificing my pleasure in the moment, which might be hanging out with some friends, in order for something I want more, which is getting home before it's full dark, because I'm not much of a fan of driving in the dark, or getting home early because it'll make it easier for me to get up in the morning and feel bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Right? So it's the same situation even without alcohol. I want you to think about that. So yes, you can think about what you're gaining, which in those cases for me would be, more hours sleep, but you may still have these sneaky little thoughts about what you're missing out on. I could be, oh, woe me, look at me. Yeah, I'm doing this for a good cause, but wow. I'm really missing out here. So what I do in those scenarios is I always remember that this is a choice. My choice, 100% my choice. There is no can't. As my dad would say, there's no can't. There is no, in this situation for me, you can't stay at this party. Even if I were travelling with my husband, or even if I need to catch a train, I can still say no. I can still say I'm staying. I can still say I care more in this moment about having this good time than getting home early and having the longer night's sleep. I can still say I'm not going to leave now. I have free will. I have choice. And you know what? 9 times out of 10, when I do this, when I think of that, it jolts me. It kind of reminds me that I'm in victim mode. I'm thinking, poor me. As though I'm some kind of passive observer of my life. It reminds me that I can do what I choose. I can stay at that party if I want to. I have free will. And just doing that often then reminds me of what I will be depriving myself of if I end up doing the thing that I said I wasn't going to do. So for instance, if I end up staying at the event, maybe I'm depriving myself of an easier drive home before it gets dark, or maybe I'm depriving myself of enough sleep if I have to get up early. And the same thing can be done at a party where maybe you want to be alcohol free, or you just want to have 1 or 2. It's getting to the end of your second. Right? And you're thinking, oh, this is it. This is where it all begins. Well, there is no can't. You can't have another one. You can. It's just that you've decided ahead of time that you won't. All that's happened is that in the moment, you're not quite so enamored with your decision, because now it's the time to take action. It's time to turn the drink down. It's just like when you plan to get up early to go to the gym tomorrow. That's the easy part. Actually doing the getting up and the getting up early is where it gets tough. But in those moments, I want you to remember you still have choice. So then ask yourself, what do you really want? This is an opportunity to ask, when you overdrink, what are you depriving yourself of instead? Is it sleep, rest, fun, trust in yourself, reduced anxiety? That's the sort of thing that you're depriving yourself of when you overdrink. So it's good to set up the scales and to remember that, as well as you're thinking, well, I'm going to be depriving myself of fun, maybe that's your belief. Plus, you're going to be depriving yourself of the trust you're building in yourself and the relationship you're building with yourself, because you're going against the decisions that you took ahead of time. If you are missing out in the moment, are you willing to pay that price, right? To feel a little bit deprived in the moment as the price of the ticket to getting a life where you aren't feeling so deprived in all the other areas that matter more, right? Where you're creating the life that you want. That's all I ask. And for me, I've decided I'm willing to pay. I'm willing to pay the ticket price to feel like I'm missing out a bit in the moment. I've gained so much in my life through doing this that I wouldn't be here if I didn't work on this. There's always going to be deprivation here or there. I've decided it's just part of life, and it really doesn't have to be a problem, because it becomes a case of, am I depriving myself of now versus what am I depriving myself of later? And the later thing is always the bigger thing, and it's always the thing that I want to be going towards. So there you go. That's your first episode of the new year, turning over a new leaf. If you want to begin that journey right now, I have a free mini video course to help you do that, to help you really get started taking action. You can find that at 90dayslater.co/3 things. Otherwise, I will see you next week.
If you like what you're learning in the podcast and you want to take the work further and achieve total freedom around alcohol, let's talk. I help my clients stop reaching for that first glass of wine the moment 6 p.m. rolls around and they don't miss out on life. Email me for more information on anna@90dayslater.co. And if you did enjoy the show, I'd really appreciate if you'd leave a rating and review to help others find the 90 Days Later podcast.